Welcome back, everyone. The U.S. Department of Justice this week announced the findings of a 2-year investigation into the Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchment.
Federal officials say there is strong evidence that the state of Mississippi violated certain constitutional rights of Parchment inmates.
This morning, we have a live interview with Danyelle Holmes and Rukia Lumumba with the Mississippi Prison Reform Coalition.
Good morning, ladies. How are y'all this morning?
Doing great, and yourself?
Doing fine. Thank you so much for joining us. So let's start off with just your reaction. What is your reaction to the new U.S. Department of Justice report on the state penitentiary at Parchment?
For me, good morning. For me, this was a ruling that we knew. We're glad this ruling has come about 2 days ago, but this was something that we knew what was going on, and so this was just confirmation to this world, to the nation, what is actually happening at Parchment, Mississippi. So we're excited that the ruling has happened, but yet we still have our offenders that are still living, loved ones that are still living in those conditions. And so we don't yet celebrate a victory until we see those conditions changed.
Rukia, did you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, no, Danyelle is right on point. I echo her sentiment. And I just add, this report is really important because it is the first time that we've seen in many decades a report that details the horrific conditions and treatment of people inside of Parchman Penitentiary. This facility has existed for nearly a century and has been a space, a place that has caused trauma. It has been a place that has been used to torture. It has been a place that has been used to confine people in some of the most inhumane situations and circumstances and conditions that you can think of. This penitentiary in particularly has been used to very clearly harm folks also for their speaking out against social injustice. We know that back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that we saw it used to confine protesters. And we see it now used in the same ways that it's been used in the past as just confining people in some of the worst conditions as if they're not important, as if their humanity doesn't matter. And I think this nation, and especially the people of Mississippi, we recognize that, yes, people who do bad, who do wrong, who cause violence, definitely need to be held accountable for their actions. But they do not need to be held in conditions that are inhumane, that are less than what we would treat an animal, how we would treat an animal. And so I think that these findings really help shine a light on all of the ways that we can be doing better in the state to actually hold people accountable without creating institutions of torture.
What do you hope will happen now that the Department of Justice has raised these concerns? They put the state of Mississippi on notice.
Well, we're hoping that because of these findings that the Mississippi Department of Corrections will actually engage in the process to shut Parchman Penitentiary down. I think that is the only solution.
All right. So now one more question this morning. Governor Tate Reeves has said that this week that significant strides have been made at Parchment in the past 2 years, and that includes reducing the number of inmates and securing more funding for prison officers. So what are your thoughts on the governor's statement that the improvements have been made?
I would say that's a blatant lie. Improvements have not been made. Actually, improvements have worsened. In the same conditions that the Department of Justice has found in their report is actually an ongoing issue right today. And so we know that we're not going to get what we need here in the state of Mississippi from our governor. Our co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, Reverend Barbara, has been in touch with U.S. Assistant Attorney Kristen Clark, and we're on our way to the United States Attorney General's office to really press and push this issue with the inhumane conditions, not just at Parchment, but within the Mississippi Department of Corrections. There are many facilities that have these conditions. They're just not as worse, but they're still inhumane conditions.
And I do want to ask one more final question just to introduce you guys and talk a little bit about you two. What are the primary objectives of the Mississippi Prison Reform Coalition? What are some of the ways that the organization tries to make these changes happen?
Thank you. Such a great question. So the Mississippi Prison Reform Coalition was developed directly in response to the cry out from people incarcerated to improve conditions inside. So the three main areas of work are: one, to improve conditions, to reduce the prison population, and two, to close Parchment Penitentiary. And so those are our three main objectives. What we have been doing since the formation of the coalition in 2020 is we've been, one, supporting through advocacy and legal support folks who have made complaints against conditions inside, including medical neglect. We have also been advocating for the improvement of conditions as they come to us. So for example, recently we saw that the East Mississippi Correctional Facility was without hot water for nearly a month. And so as soon as we found out, we were able to push and have a call to action to encourage family members and other members of the community to call in to get that fixed. Some things people hear and they'll say, well, that's not a big deal not having hot water. But when you're living in a prison situation, you may have chronic illness, you are understaffed, and the corrections department is significantly understaffed. I want to make that very clear. To the point where it is even abusive to staff to put staff in conditions where they have to care for 120 people at one time, provide them medication, figure out how to address crisis and other issues while also trying to ensure safety. Mm-hmm. And so it's about really addressing a lot of these things and doing it in a way where we're not only just advocating, but we're also pushing for solutions. And so engaging community members, loved ones who have been incarcerated, as well as their family members in the process of showing up to legislative hearings, showing up to meetings, and providing information and opportunity to actually create solutions to correct the problems that we're seeing.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Again, Rukia and Danyelle joining us from Jackson this morning so early. And again, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.